This is Eric L. Donovan, the Mindset Disruption Strategist. Let's talk about generational wealth. More specifically, let's talk about the 4 elements of generational wealth that most families are ignoring in 2022. Now, before we get into these 4 elements, make sure that you subscribe here to my channel and also make sure to hit the notification bell so that as new content is coming out, you keep getting that information on how to build generational prosperity and kingdom impact inside of your family. So, generational wealth, right? It's something we all have a strong desire for because we love our children. We love our grandchildren. We think about the legacy and the opportunity that we will leave behind us, and we want to be remembered. I'm going to tell you, as I said, there are 4 elements of generational wealth that I find most families just completely miss. They miss the opportunity to really create this generational wealth and this memory side of things. Because what you're going to find is rather than this being financial, the majority of this has to do with the relationship and family side of the things that you're doing to build generational wealth. What is item number 1? Well, it's values. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. There are a lot of people and a lot of families who will tell you, yeah, we got values. I mean, we value faith and we value this, and we value giving back. Here's what I'm going to ask you. Is it documented anywhere? Written down? Have you as a family all sat down and said, yes, these are our family values. This is exactly what we stand for. And what this has to do with is creating a mutual understanding and consensus for the values and purpose of the family. See, there is a very intentional way to do this, but if you're not intentional, you're going to just create some loose values. Secondly, you're going to be in a place where you may think those are the values, but the rest of the family doesn't. So are you creating an environment in which not only is there consensus, but each member of the family can say, yes, that's one of our values, but let me tell you what that means to me. I'm going to tell you what the application of that is inside of my life. You see how that's different? Do you see why that's important? The final thing I'm going to tell you is it needs to be documented in some way. We have our family core values in our home on a plaque in our living room. And we reflect back on them and we look back on them and we speak over our children specifically to what those values are. Like, Eric, why does that matter? Let me tell you why that matters. Because what kind of generational wealth are you trying to leave? Are you trying to leave generational wealth that will last? I'm going to tell you what, it takes intentionality. Because the one thing that I know that's interesting is if you don't document it and you're not intentional, it's as if it never happened. Want some proof? Here is the values and purpose for Harvard University when it was founded in 1636. Harvard's purpose statement was this: to be plainly instructed and consider well that the main end of your life and studies is to know God and Jesus Christ. That was in 1636 at Harvard. Guess what? It was written down. It was memorialized. And you look at Harvard today and how far removed are they from that purpose? It takes intentionality. It takes really being about it. And if you don't have it documented, you've already missed step 1 of the process. But let's say you do. Let's say that you have written values and purpose for the family. Well, then what is item number 2 of the element that most families are missing? Well, item number 2 is vision. And I'm going to give this to you in maybe a little bit different way than you think of it. But when I talk about vision, I'm more specifically talking about you as mom and dad or grandpa and grandma cast a vision for each child and grandchild. Each one. Let me get more specific about what I mean and why I'm talking about this. Here's what I know. Every single person, including myself, is carrying around a bit of self-doubt. a little bit of, man, do people believe in me? Do people think of me? And here's the other side of this coin. As a parent, as a grandparent, you look at your children, you look at your grandchildren, and I would imagine that the majority of your thoughts are positive. The majority of your thoughts are good. The majority of your thoughts are like, man, that's a great kid, or I love the way that they do that. Sometimes they're critical, I understand, but the majority of them are good. But we don't spend enough time expressing them. The other thing is, human beings, even if somebody says something good to us, we leak, right? We may feel good, we run into a hard moment, and we forget the good things that were said. What I'm talking about is specifically taking the time to think about a child of yours and write a letter to them about the vision that you see, the possibilities that you see inside of them, the reality of what you see inside of them. I'm going to tell you, it's good if you've got the capacity to do this once every year or once every 2 years. Maybe you make it a Christmas present or something like that. But at a bare minimum, sit down and cast a vision at least once and do it. Write one specific letter to each one of your children. And what if you did this to each one of your grandchildren? Do you understand what kind of generational wealth at this point you're building in by giving them that vision? When they're in a hard moment, they pull out the letter and they begin to see inside themselves what you saw inside of them, and they hold on to them, and just imagine what that would do. But not only that, dream with me a few generations ahead. Imagine your grandchildren are sitting down with their grandchildren and sharing the letter that you wrote. Let me tell you about my grandfather. Let me tell you about my grandmother. They gave me this letter. And then maybe they create one for theirs too, right? So it then becomes this duplication effect over and over and over again from a generational wealth standpoint. What kind of vision is being cast over the family at that point? And how beautiful would it be as that gets passed down from generation to generation? When we talk about being remembered, when I talk about making an impact, what kind of impact would that make? Item number 3, it's getting missed by families, is voice. And I'm gonna tell you, this is a hard one. Because right now in the world today, if you were to ask me, the number one struggle is we don't want anyone to have a voice that disagrees with us. It is hard to sit down and have discussions because everything is so politicized. Everything is so black or white, or one side or the other, or blue or red, or however you want to look at that. The world has decided that there is no more gray, and we have forgot how to just simply have conversations, because inside of conversations, we learn from each other. When we actually listen to someone's opinion, do you not? You probably do, right? But we have to understand that people come to an opinion because of experiences and worldviews and things that they have. It doesn't mean their opinion's always right, but the only way you're ever going to change anyone's opinion is to begin by listening. Would you ever change your opinion about anything at all if someone just came and said, well, no, you're just wrong? And so here's the way that I like to say it. Give your heirs a voice, even if they don't get a vote. I'm not asking you to change your mind. What I am asking you is to consider the generational wealth that is created inside of a relationship. When you say, hey, I know that you feel this about that situation. Tell me a little bit more about that. I remember a couple of years ago during the George Floyd situation, our oldest son, Clayton, felt very passionately about everything that was going on in the protests. And we were having conversations like, hey, I want to go to downtown and I want to protest with the organizations. And we were just having conversations. Tell us more about what you're thinking. What's getting you engaged here? Why is this important to you? And in the course of that, we were able to hear exactly what he was looking to do. At the same time, what we were a little concerned about was in certain protests, things sometimes get out of hand, right? That what the original intent of the protest turns into something else. So we were then able to have a conversation about, hey, let me hear your voice. You hear our voice. This is why we're concerned. I'm not concerned that you're going to the protest. I'm concerned sometimes protests turn into something else. So how do we minimize that? How do we change that? And inside of that, what could have been very contentious or hard turned into a beautiful situation, which I feel like is even a blessing today in conversations that we have. But I say not a vote because at the end of the day, especially from a generational wealth standpoint and from your leadership as a parent or grandparent, it is your job to listen. You need to change your mind when you should, but sometimes your job is to make the hard decision because it's your stewardship. It's what you're managing. So Don't feel like you have to give up your position just because they're talking. Be open to it. But they don't get to vote on whether or not you change your mind. But I'm going to tell you what, in those circumstances, and we've seen it with family after family after family, when you open it up to the possibility of, I'm being heard, what started out as something really contentious actually opens up to something beautiful because you've listened. What about element number 4, the final element that I'm watching families completely miss out on from a generational wealth standpoint is this: venture. Doing things together as a family with a purpose. So encouraging multi-generational engagement, either through generosity or something impact-wise. And this could be doing business together, but I'm going to tell you where the real magic of this happens is when the family unit comes together for a purpose larger than itself, bigger than itself, that everyone can get excited and energized by. Let me give you an example. My family is kind of my stories because it's how I've really learned to build the generational wealth into my own children, into my family, and what Angel, my wife, and I are starting. But we had some conversations just around what our family was most concerned about. Now, I'm a business owner. I like starting businesses. I like putting capital. I like hiring people and helping them see their own potential. That's kind of part of my love language. My wife loves loving on people and taking care of people. And my kids have grown up in that environment. But as we were talking to them and their concerns, a lot of what they were concerned about centered on poverty. And some of even things that they see as injustices that are going on right now, and the difference between people who have and people who need, and the poverty that's going on in our country. And we started talking about how that could come together in a beautiful way, and have been, as a family, looking to partner with organizations who are working in areas of poverty and teaching people business and teaching people how to use those businesses to hire people in their community, and helping to partner with them if there's hard funding and things like that. It's also an area where my wife gets to love on people. We started hitting every single person in the family's desires and goals, but it started by listening and then creating engagement. Generosity became the tool. Maybe there's a business that could do that. Maybe there's a mission trip or something like that. But what is it that your family can do that can come together as a venture, as a family, that builds the generational wealth, that builds the generational relationship and opens you up? Do you see how values, vision, voice, and venture actually are just different dynamics of the same things happening? When you have values, you know how to cast a vision, you know how to create the voice to be heard, and that will guide the venture. Put all 4 of these together and you have an incredible piece of generational wealth that, again, the majority of the world is missing. And if your heart is kingdom impact and generational prosperity, then putting these 4 elements of generational wealth into the way that you structure it are must-haves. They're non-negotiable. And one last little piece of information that I'll leave with you. One of the things that my wife and I have found is in doing all of this, doing something is better than nothing. But if you have the resources and the capacity to bring in a third party who's skilled inside of helping you pull all these things together, I've found that my kids share a lot more and give a lot more and help us understand a lot more direction when I've had a third party in the room to help counsel us through these things. So rather than it being mom and dad are setting the rules on how all of this is done, we kind of have a third party who is the arbitrator between everyone, who calls me out if I'm being too harsh, who can help the kids feel their voice being heard. And that is super valuable inside of the overall process. So I'd have you consider that as well. Thank you so much for being with me on this journey as we consider how to build generational wealth. God bless you.